Okay, so I have a problem that's already set up, and I'm just going to look at the math of this problem and kind of how to go about putting it in a calculator solver. So if you guys notice, this would have been given in the equation somewhere, like in the information or maybe from a chart or something, but that number has to have been given somewhere. Then we have k is equal to, and I'm just going to plug numbers in. So I have a value for that. I have a value for this. And then I have a value over here for this other thing. So I'm just plug them in. X times x over 1.00 minus x equals 0.0211. So that's pretty easy right there. And I'm going to actually go ahead and put these x's together so that I have x squared, because I think that's easier. Now, what I'm going to do is bring up my this math app. Oops, I meant to make it whole screened. There we go. Get started. And this just pops right up at the top. And you see how I've got a nice full screen right here on my, when I click on that, that's what you want if you're using like an iPad or something like that. So I'm going to bring this over and just kind of zoom in. These are the numbers that we're going to put in. And this is what's nice. You don't have to like rearrange it and, like go in here and when you, after you cross multiply, then like do it times that, and then rearrange it, find A, B, and C. So I'm just going to keep it like it is. So I have x squared on top. Oops, x squared on top. And then divided by parentheses. And I like how it has that little picture above so it can match better. You don't have to do 0.00, but minus x. I'm trying to match it so they look really good. And then you can put the equal sign in. And then you can do 0.0211. So that's cool, right? So now I'm going to push calculate it. And it does just step by step, but it already gives the answer. Now, if you look at those two answers, this is like something you do every day in upper level chemistry. You throw out the number that doesn't make any sense. So it's impossible to have a negative mass. The only time in chemistry that we have negative things is if we're on the Celsius scale and we're going below zero. And related is if we're dealing with certain terms in thermodynamics, because a negative doesn't really mean negative. It means in heat or out heat. So for everything else, you can't be negative. You can't have a negative mass because that means you would not exist. So we throw away the right answer and we just write down the left answer. X equals 0.135091. And then I'm going to come over here, and just as a note, what I just solved was for this and for this, and then for the x right there. So you can see that's a solved problem. And then I'm going to go back over and I'm going to solve the second one. Now this one has a method that you could use that is traditionally taught, and you would have learned it in another class like, I don't know, algebra or something like that. So right here, that's how my matching up goes. So I have x, and it's not just any x, it's a 2x squared over parentheses 1.00 minus x, and you'll notice those are actually the same thing. So I can put it in like that, or if I wanted to simplify it, I could do 4x squared over 1.00 minus x squared equals the 4.1 times 10 to the minus fourth. Now, if you aren't using that calculator thing, and it's fine if you don't want to, the way you would solve it is that you would do the square root of both sides. So that ends up, you end up getting 2x over 1 minus x, and then it's whatever the square root of that number is over there. It'd be like 2-ish times 10 to the minus 2. And then you'll cross multiply that up, and then bring your x terms together and solve. However, you can also choose to go here, and we can put a new problem in here. I'm going to bring this back over. And now I'm going to just go with this top term up here. So parentheses 2x raised to the 2, and then divided by, and I'm just, again, making sure that everything matches. I'm looking at that little picture just above the box I'm typing into. 1.00 minus x, and I think it's easier just to type raised to the 2 here, so I'm going to do that. So you can simplify however you want, equals, and then that's the thing it equaled, was the 4.1 4.1 times, oops, I should use the actual times, not x. 4.1 times 10 raised to the minus 4th. So let's see what happens when we calculate it and solve. Oh, it already solved it for us. So again, I've got two numbers, a negative and a positive. The answer is going to be the positive number. So, oops, x is equal to 0.010023. All right, now let's try this final one over here. Oops, again, I've got to do it in a certain way or it won't let me. I'm going to jump over here and I'm going to fill this one in. So I've got an x term. I've got another term there. And then I've got this. So that gives me x times x over 0.15 minus x equals 4.9 times 10 to the minus 10th. Now, you're going to come up with something that is recommended to do in the acid-base chapter. And the key part of this is that this is a very tiny k value. If you look up here, yeah, this is a smallish k value. And you look up here, that's not a small k value, but a really tiny. You see, that's the order of the 10th, especially compared to this number, like a factor of like 1,000 difference at least. There's a shortcut you can do, which will make the math easier, and it might not be worth it for you to type it in the calculator. So the shortcut is to say that your x is way smaller than your 0.15, and it's so small that it doesn't matter. So this is like saying that the x is probably going to turn out to be 0.000000001. When you subtract that from 0.15, that's not going to make much difference. So you end up with x squared over 0.15 equals 4.9 times 10 to the 10th. And then you can see how this math is a lot easier this way. 4.9 times 10 to the minus 10th times 0.15. So you would just solve that and then take the square root of it. So you are not going to have to do this in this chapter, but I'm using this opportunity to preview as well as showing you how to do this problem on that calculator also, just so you have the practice. So again, there's our calculator, and I'm going to erase what I had in it. And then I'm going to bring this back over. And here's this problem right here. So I can say x squared divided by parentheses 0.15 minus x parentheses equals 4.9 times 10, oops, there we go, 10, raised to the negative 10th, and then when I grab that, I've got that number, and do you see how small x is? It is true, 0.12345, that number compared to this number is way super small, and that only happens, again, when this exponent is really small, and it makes this number at least like a factor of 1,000 off from that number. But again, you can just put in the calculator and you've got it solved.